Welcome to our webinar on protecting your Kubernetes environment. Yeah, we're going to make this a very interesting webinar. First, wanted to check if everybody can hear me, if the audio is fine, if the presentation is visible. If you could write in the chat if there is everything is good, then we can get started with that. Perfect. Okay, great. So always have to check, right? So during this presentation, and for most parts, right, I am here accompanied by a colleague, Kasten. Kasten, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Peter. Hi, everybody. So thank you for joining us today for this for this webinar. So my name is Kasten K10. I'm a senior system engineer for Kasten, covering the EMEA territory right now. And I hope that you will enjoy this session as much we enjoyed preparing it with Peter.
Absolutely. And I myself, Peter Verreken, I'm a cloud solutions architect for EMEA, and obviously responsible for, let's say, the Veeam products, right? So I needed an expert on Kubernetes and Custom, so that's why we brought Kasten here. So a few housekeeping rules. Everybody was muted on entry. Yes. If you have a question, do not be shy. Yes, we like to have interaction with the audience. Just ask, use the Q&A panel or the chat function, whatever works best for you. And as usual, we will share the recording and the slides, probably not today, but in a couple of days, right? So everything will be shared, so you will not miss anything in case something comes up you need to leave earlier. All right. So what's the agenda for today? We are going to have a look at Veeam plus Custom, right? Then we're going to dive into the Kasten platform. Kasten is going to show an awesome demo of the software, and then we are going to bring you some interesting resources, some things to wrap up, and Q&A. Well, basically, if we have too many questions, then at the end we will also answer some more of those, and otherwise, where possible, we will answer them during the session. Yeah. So first of all, Veeam plus Custom, right? We believe that now we have a really strong foundation here, and it's also because, let's say, on the Veeam solutions part and on Custom solution part, right, we see very many similarities. Yeah. So if we think about, we have multi-workloads, right? So both softwares, both solutions are constantly working with multi-workloads. Yeah. So we have different types of environments. Yeah. We're no longer just working on premises. Yeah. We also have probably something running in the cloud. Yeah. So maybe we're also using AWS or Azure, right? And we need to get from on-premises to AWS or Azure or Google, right? Or we need to get things back here. Yeah. We also need to make sure that all of the applications, right, all the data services like databases, etc., that when we back those up, that everything can be application aware, right? So that whenever we do a restore, that we have everything in a consistent manner. Yeah. And we're also both, let's say, like to work with multiple vendors. So it means that we are pretty storage agnostic. There is no lock-in from our side. You could basically use any type of storage that you prefer. Maybe you already have some storage in place. Maybe you want to use something else. The choice is yours, basically. Yeah. So this is definitely something that customers over the years have appreciated, because maybe today you like this storage, tomorrow you like something else, and the choice is yours to make. So you can always switch that. Yeah. And important to know is that, yeah, where at Veeam is always been, let's say, a virtual environment first, right? Created for the hypervisors, for VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, right? Also added later the physical environment, and also adopted cloud, public cloud, AWS Google Azure. Yeah, their Kasten is a Veeam company specifically for Kubernetes native. Yeah. And if we have a quick look at the platform, yeah, so probably familiar for most of you. It's on the right, we have the entire Veeam platform, right? We have the cloud, we have the SaaS, the virtual and physical that I just mentioned, and then the entire bunch of storages that we can work with, yeah, through universal storage APIs. And if we put the Kasten platform next to that, where we see very many similarities, right? We have a storage infrastructure. It's just not one type of storage, but again, storage agnostic, can work with all these types. Yeah, of course, Kubernetes native. Yeah, so then different distributions. So would you like, or better, do you have already an infrastructure in place and you're using any of these tools on premises? Perfect. We have a solution for you, right? Are you then going to look at the public clouds? Yeah? You're going to run something on Google, for example. Okay, we've got you covered there, right? We can also migrate between them from on-premises to public cloud and back. Yeah, and of course, data services, application consistency for the databases. That is all covered as well. And before I give the hand to Gatien, we have a quick poll actually for you. So Kirill, if you can, yes, perfect. So the quick poll here is, well, you should see it on the screen now, and we would just like to know if you are already running Kubernetes, right? It's just for us to have an idea of what is the audience that we have here. Yes, on premises, yes, in public cloud. Just testing, looking around, yeah, don't really have a use case, but I just want to get up with the technology, or no, right? So let's see how people vote on this part. Oh,
it's pretty interesting so far. Huh? We can see that we have more people that are using it than people that are not using it at all.
That's cool, really. Yeah. I'm surprised.
Definitely.
That's great to know.
62% people. Yeah, that's a pretty big number. To be honest, I didn't thought that this number would be so big.
Yeah, so we have the perfect audience here. So excellent.
Yeah.
Great. So then, Gatien, you can take over and then show us the solution.
Yes, here we go. So let me share my global screen. It's going to be easier. So you should see my screen right now.
Yeah, well, perfect.
We'll do then the next slide. Thank you, Peter, for this introduction, and I hope that you've seen and that you started to see that there is definitely a great some great possibilities and that Kasten is a great addition to the Veeam family and to the Veeam product right now in order to cover this global infrastructure part. So quick solution details here before we can start with a small demo. And this is really more about what we can deliver as a product. So Kasten is delivering three main functionalities: backup and recovery, application mobility, and disaster recovery. All those functionalities being provided through a native graphical interface that is multi-tenant and has some role-based access control functionalities. And because we are a Kubernetes native solution, which means that we are acting as an application being deployed inside of your Kubernetes cluster, then we can use all those Kubernetes presets that are most particularly the scaling part, the high availability part. So in terms of scaling, if you have a lot of load, a lot of tasks that needs to be run, then Kasten is able to spawn and create some new additional pods in order to maintain the same level of performances in terms of ingestion, restore, or even export. And if you do have no load or really small amount of load, then we are able to scale down at the minimum with the minimum of pods that we need in order to have the smallest footprint on your Kubernetes cluster. So this is really a major point here of being a Kubernetes native solution. We are then obviously creating and doing all those actions in a complete encrypted way. So everything is being encrypted from an end-to-end perspective, plus for the data that is being encrypted at rest. We then generate a lot of metadata that will allow us to provide those two additional functionalities. And the first of those two is application mobility. Application mobility is a functionality that all of our customers and prospects are using, and it's simply the ability for Kasten to interact with the application while it is being restored, while it is being moved. So let's take a quick example, and we will do it during the demo right after. From my on-prem data center, and I need to move it or to migrate it into an EKS cluster in AWS or into an OpenShift service provider or anything like that. Well, you know that one of the basic specifications that will change is what we call the storage class name. And this storage class, Kasten will be able to change it dynamically while it is restoring the application in order for the app to start completely normally and interact with its storage in a complete transparent way. And application mobility is really useful also when you need to refresh some data, for example, your test and dev cluster or your pre-production data, and refresh the content of those applications with the data, so it is avoiding you to redeploy every night the global application. You can just restore the content of the PVC really easily and in a complete automated way. Then we can provide the disaster recovery functionalities. So disaster recovery mostly speaks by itself, but it's the combination of application mobility and recovery. And it's the ability for Kasten to do and to create disaster recovery at two different levels. First level is at the Kasten level. So being able to make a complete backup of Kasten catalog and Kasten configuration, export it, and use it again in order to redeploy the application if there was any issue. And I think that it should ring your bell with your actual Veeam solution, for example. And the second part is obviously the disaster recovery of your application for all or part of your application into a different cloud, a different region, or a different environment with all those transformation abilities. So this is really the major point here at Kasten and for the different functionalities that we can provide. And obviously, this approach is completely focused on the global application, which means that while most of our competitors right now are focusing on these two parts, the persistent data with the PV and the PVC, we do focus on the global application as the operational unit here, which means that we are backing up the application from the top to the end, the global application with all its spec, all its ingress class, services, deployment, secret, config map, obviously pods, PV, PVCs, etc., etc. And we do a complete abstraction of the infrastructure the application is working on top of, which means that after backup with Kasten, your application is like a small bubble that can be moved anywhere you want at any time with the same simplicity. And because we do not use any proprietary agent, any proprietary proxies or anything like that, and that we interact only with the native Kubernetes API, we are able to perform all those operations in a complete or coordinated way for all your consistent data into your Kubernetes cluster. And this is a small overview of the Kasten architecture, and most specifically about the different layers we do interact with. Obviously, the first layer is the orchestrator layer, the orchestrator API, the Kubernetes API. We use all the Kubernetes API to discover all the application, all their components, and perform all of our operation, as I mentioned it previously. But then secondly, obviously, Kubernetes is interacting on top of some infrastructure, and we do need to interact with this infrastructure also. This infrastructure is mostly based on the storage layer. So we are able to interact with any of the storage layer with different level of integration. The first one is what we're calling the direct integration. For example, into the public cloud, we are able to discuss and to interact with the native API of AWS, of Azure, or even Google Cloud, and then interact with their storage API to trigger some native snapshot or native functionalities like that. The second layer will be the CSI, the container storage interface that you can have with your storage class. And so we'll be able to trigger some snapshot from this CSI if there is a volume snapshot class. And then the third part is if you don't have any of those two previous integration, then we can leverage what we are calling the GVS, the generic volume snapshot, and be able to provide a backup of an application, even if you do not have a volume snapshot class on your storage class. And so do a sidecar injection inside of each of your pod in order to back them up. And then third part is what we're calling the application blueprint that we can provide through an open source framework that we developed and that we created that is being called Canister. Canister is basically allowing us to extend our backup functionalities with the help of dedicated blueprint that you can manage, that you can develop, that you can enhance, and also use the blueprints that are provided by Kasten in order to move at the application layer. So create a logical backup or even an app consistent backup of an application. And everything is being provided through a native GUI. You remember we spoke about that 2 or 3 slides ago. Of course, there is a nice dark mode options that we will use right after that. But this is really the purpose of explaining that we can interact here with this graphical interface without the need of being a Kubernetes expert, a Kubernetes certified administrator, or even use the CLI for our backup like some of our competitors are doing. I mean, we are in 2021. I do like the CLI, but if I can manage my backup with a GUI in order to be extremely fast and extremely native for all my application, this is definitely something I would like to take directly. So we can interact with all the application that has been automatically discovered here, create some native policy to manage the life cycle of our application, then manage all the data that has been exported or ingested, and below with the activity log, interact with any of the tasks that run inside of our cluster. So let's go and move in a quick demo for this product. We will manage to keep some time for some Q&A at the end of the session. So feel free to ask your question while we are doing this demo, and then we will manage to take some time at the end, as I said. Peter, by the way, if you have anything to add or anything you would like to say during the demo or like that, feel free. This is your webinar.
Perfect.
So this is the Kasten infrastructure. This is the Kasten dashboard. So I would like to introduce you, first of all, everything that we will present today. This is a cluster that is running locally on-premise in my home lab. This is a Kubernetes cluster that is running into Amazon EKS. I deployed Kasten also on top of that. On the left here, I can see the different nodes that I have into my EKS cluster in AWS. So 3 nodes with this EKS cluster, version 1.18.9. And this is my only node into my on-prem lab with a 1.20.7 Kubernetes version. So as you can see, two different clusters in two different infrastructure with two different versions, and even using different storage class. So on my home lab, I don't have any CSI. This is a true decision on my side. I didn't want any CSI provisioner or anything. So I'm using a default AllSpace with my local storage, while in AWS, obviously, I'm using the native storage class, which is the GP2 integration, which is basically some AWS EBS storage, so block storage. So let's first connect to our infrastructure. I have a few settings I can define here and that we will manage. Location profile, it is here that I will define some location profile in order to export the data, the backup data, outside of my Kubernetes cluster. It would be kind of the same thing as backup copy job for Veeam environment if you were keeping your data, locally into your cluster. So we can define any cloud storage, any public cloud storage, any S3 compatible storage. So it can be an S3 into the public cloud, like Wasabi services or Backblaze or things like that. But it can also be obviously an S3 storage that is on premise. So you can select any S3 storage from your preferred vendor or even from a software perspective with Min.io and things like that. Or we can also use NFS file store in order to export this data. And starting this summer with the v11.1 of Veeam, we will be able to export this data also to a Veeam backup repository if the source infrastructure is based on VMware, so on VMware VM. Not specifically Tanzu, it can be OpenShift, it can be anything, but with a VMware infrastructure. We can then provide here the K10 disaster recovery functionality. So you will have a nice green button in order to enable the Kasten DR. Then you will provide a passphrase, a password, and you will be able to retrieve this native cluster ID for Kasten. Automatically, it will create a policy that will back up Kasten and export this data to the location profile we provided. So let's check that. And obviously, this part, the most important part of the GUI, being able to change in the light or dark version, or also before you are ending at night, having a nice clear view and then switching to the dark view. I will stick to the light one here because our AWS part will be in dark one after that. So we will be able to make the difference between both of those ones. I think that I have a policy that is running, so that is perfect. We are protecting our data. And we can see here the different application that has been discovered into our cluster. So 5 applications. Moving back into my cluster, kubectl get ns, default, ingress, WordPress, Postgres demo. Perfect. You can see here that we are not seeing the Kasten.io application because we do provide that. We can back up our cluster scope resources also. I have 164 cluster resources here that I can back up apart from any application. But what if I want to protect one of my applications? Let's say that I want to protect my PostgreSQL database. I can review the different detail of my application, so different labels, the kubectl native command that is being run on top of our API, and then I can review the different components of my application. So if I want to back it up, pretty simple. I can move back into my policy tile, select any new policy and add this application, or I can create a policy and dedicate it to my PostgreSQL database. So let's say that it's going to be a Postgres, it's going to be a PG backup DB. I'm going to select the kind of action that I want to run. It can be a backup action or an import action. We will run an import action after that in EKS. So for now, it's going to be a backup. I can select the frequency of my backup. So let's say that I want to do a backup of this application twice per hour. And then I want to keep a small retention locally. So I want to keep 4 hours locally inside of my cluster, as close as possible to my original application. And in parallel, I want to use my S3 location in order to export every snapshot and use a custom retention to keep way much more history of my backup. So this would be perfect in that case. I will be able to retrieve this data in a really simple way. Then I can select how I want to protect my application. Do I want to protect my application by name? And so every time a new application is being deployed, I can add this selection into my pipeline, or I need to do it manually? Or do I want to protect my application by labels? And in that case, it's going to be the same thing as if I was protecting my VM by label, by tag, for example. So I can use the instance Postgres here, and automatically any application that will be discovered and that will contain this instance Postgres label will be protected by this policy. So it's going to be completely dynamic. Let's select our application right now. I can then choose what kind of application resources I want to protect. Do I want to protect all the resources of my application? Or do I want to protect only the resources that I need to choose? Let's say, for example, we are using HashiCorp Vault in order to manage our different secrets. I can define a filter to exclude any resources that will be a secret in order to avoid my secret to be stored at the same time they are being stored into HashiCorp. So really simply, I can exclude this filter, and if I have some cluster scope resources to add, I can just add any cluster resource, scope resources in addition. So for this demo, let's select all the resources, create the policy, and the policy will appear on the left. Policy is there. I can review the different criteria that I selected. I can copy this native kubectl command. I can edit everything, or I can review my policy with a native YAML file that has been created. And because we are 100% API, I can modify this YAML file in order to keep way less history. Just hitting the edit policy and you will see that this retention will be completely modified. Simple as that. I can then run the backup, run this policy, take a look at our dashboard. We can see that the number of artifacts will increase as soon as the backup will start. We have another backup that is, running on the same application. Look at that. I think I hit it twice the button. So live artifacts are increasing. I can see the different phases that my backup has done. So all those artifacts and all those specs has been backed up with 3 different phases. First one, the application configuration, then the stateful set, then all the components. So we did the backup of the pods, PDCs, etc., etc. And then we did export the data to our S3 location in order to use it for later purpose. So you can see that the backup has been done really quickly in a complete new way, and some data has been ingested. So this was the first part. First part is executed in a pretty good way. So what's happening right now if I want to restore a global application? It's cool. We have a WordPress that is running inside of our local home lab. This WordPress is a simple blog that is my blog. It has my name, and I have some blog posts also. But yeah, whatever the reason can be, I'm a little bit clumsy this morning, and so yeah, I'm gonna delete everything. So everything is moving to the trash. And when there is absolutely nothing else to see, well, my blog is completely empty. There is no result anymore. So I didn't activate anything on WordPress side, but lucky me, I was protecting this WordPress application with my Kubernetes cluster, with my Kubernetes application, sorry. So I can simply hit the restore button. I can review here the different volume and the different workload of my application. I can see that there are 2 PVCs of 20 gig each. So yes, my application is there. Let's take a look. Yes, I have 2 stateful sets inside of it. So let's do a watch on this part and let's restore our application. So hitting the restore button, I can select the point I want to use. Let's use the point of tonight. The blue point is the local one. The green point is the one that has been exported to RS3. If I'm selecting the green one, there is a small warning saying that it will require additional time, obviously. So let's select the blue one. It has been done 9 hours and 35 minutes ago with this policy. I can again retrieve the native kubectl command to interact with this restore point. I will restore this application into its original namespace. I can select any other namespace or create a new one to clone it. And I can select some additional resources. Let's say that I want to restore only the content of my PV and not the global application, or that I want to transform the application because I want to move it. We will do this right after that. So I'm going to restore the global application with all of its artifacts, hit the restore button, and monitor that into our dashboard. And you will see that in the background, some stuff will start as soon as the restore task will pop up. So restore task is popping up. There is always 3 to 5 second lag between here. So restore task is there. I can monitor that into my terminal, and I can see that my application is being stopped. So what's happening here? Kasten is interacting with the Kubernetes API. It is asking to Kubernetes to stop the application because we will interact with it. So we will stop the application. Once that the application will be stopped, we will remove the different PVCs of the application where the persistent data is being stored. Then Kasten will start 2 new pods, 1 per PVC. Those pods will be called restore-data and will be in charge of reading the content of the Kasten backup, recreate a new PVC, and then restore the data into each PVC. So one is taking care of the WordPress data, the other one of the WordPress-MySQL. The WordPress one is really way smaller than the MySQL, so it's already terminated. The second one, the KB46R, is still running. It's still restoring some data. And so if I'm moving here and checking on my blog is down. So after both of those pods will have finished, to restore the data, they will terminate themselves. We would wait a few additional seconds, maybe something like 15 to 20 seconds in addition, for the second pod to stop. When it will terminate itself, Kasten won't wait for it to be removed, and it will start to restore the original pods with a new identifier at the end. So the WordPress MySQL and the WordPress pod. Those 2 pods will be restored. They will be bound to their new PVCs, and then the application will start automatically. And we should see that our blog is back again. That's cool. Everything is up and running. If I'm refreshing here, I should see my blog and my posts are there. That's a pretty good deal here. But we can also obviously restore part of the application, like only a secret, only a deployment, only a PVC, anything like that. So we are right on time in order to do the next part, which is migration of our application into our AWS cluster. So let's just generate a token here for AWS. So I'm just retrieving a token to authenticate to my AWS cluster. Enable, I forgot one of the character at the end, which is a small g. So cluster is there. Application, yeah, we have only an application that is being called Pacman. And yes, it is the Pacman game. And I can tell you that it is working pretty well on Kubernetes. So do I have my WordPress application? I should have nothing. No, nothing. Okay, cool. So what I need to do here is import my application from my on-prem lab to the CKS cluster and monitor what's happening inside of this supposedly WordPress application that doesn't exist right now. There is nothing. So what I need to do is create an import policy on this part. So I will create an import policy. Oh, look at that. I forgot to remove it. So I need to create an import policy. It's going to be an import -wp import. I will, oh, I need this. What is that? It is a token. This token, I can check it on my original cluster, take the original policy of the WordPress backup, grabbing this token import detail, moving back into AWS, pasting this, and automatically my profile, my S3 profile has been added as a compatible profile. I can now say that I want to import my data every hour, for example, and check like every 15 minutes if there is any new data. If there is any new data, I can tell it, sorry, if there is any new data, I can tell it to restore automatically my application, for example. This is not what we want right now. So let's create the policy, run this import policy, monitor it into our dashboard. The import policy should pop up here. It should take a few seconds in order to check if there are some data inside of this S3 location. Did I hit the run policy? Yeah, okay. So data is here. I can move into my application. And because my application is not present, taking a look at the remove application, my WordPress is there, selecting it. Latest point is the point of this night into my S3. It's perfectly fine. Done 9 hours and 40 minutes ago. Native kubectl command again. I can choose a namespace. I'm not going to put anything because Kasten will restore it automatically in its original namespace. And I need to apply a transformation because you remember we were using the micro-K10 host path for the storage at the source. We need to use GP2 right now. So create a new transformation. It's cool because we have an example here in order to change the storage class. So we will impact the resources persistent volume claim, create an operation to replace the path of this storage class with this value. Our value is going to be GP2. Hitting GP2, testing the operation. So I can check for the persistent volume claim of the MySQL PVC, for example. I can move a little bit down and check where is my, oh, my storage class name is here, line 90. So what will happen with my source part? Oh, the storage class will be changed to GP2. Sounds perfect to me. So I can close this, edit the operation, create a transformation, restore my complete application, hit the restore button, validate, go into my dashboard, task will start, and as soon as it will start, we should see some pods appearing here. So we will see the same thing as previously. We will see two pods, two restore pod, restore-data, that will be created. As soon as they will be created, they will do the same thing, basically, reading the content of the Kasten backup, creating new PVCs, restoring the data inside of those PVC, and then they will recreate the original pod, bound the PVCs, and restart everything. So yeah, I noticed that I had a few latencies with EKS previously. I think you've seen it when I was running some command. There was some latency, but nothing worse, but yeah, some latency still. So everything has been restored. Original pod will be restored again. And because we are restoring all the deployment and things like that, we should create something to access to our dashboard, to our WordPress application. So I do think that if I'm checking right now the different services of my WordPress application, yes, I have a load balancer that has been automatically created here. I can just take this external IP. It will listen on the port 80, so that sounds perfect. And if I'm grabbing this one, closing it, grabbing the other one, launching this, hitting the enter button. Oh, look at that. My blog is there. Is it my blog? Yes, it's my blog. That sounds quite perfect to me. So now that you've seen the global demo and move, an application move of the demo, I will just do the next part with those 2 additional slides, and Peter will wrap up this webinar.
Yeah, Katja, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can you actually, because I suppose that on premises you're running some version of Kubernetes, and when you migrate it to public cloud, for example, when you do this migration, does it have to be the same version, or you can have different versions, or?
No, absolutely not. We just need to have a version that is compatible with our product, which is the 1.12 minimum, which is a pretty old Kubernetes version already. But in this demo, I moved it from my local Kubernetes cluster, which is a 1.20.7 version, to the EKS cluster that is a 1.18 by default. So no, everything has been moved without any issue.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, based on that, we did release a new version 1.5 months ago, right before the KubeCon, early May. And we do use a really quick sprint in order to develop our solution, which is a 2-week sprint. So every 2 weeks, there is a new version that is being released with additional functionalities, bug fixes, security fixes from the different components that we use. And you can see that we have a pretty fast development cycle, with this 3.0 version being a version released by the end of November, and this 4.0 being released by the start of May. And we were really proud to announce this V4 version because it enhanced the different use of our solution. We had a pretty big step in terms of ecosystem scale, while by announcing that we were the first solution officially certified by Nutanix, for example. So we are the only data management solution certified for Carbon and certified Nutanix ready. And we were also the first solution compatible with HP Ezmeral Kubernetes solution. So definitely a huge step. And last but not least, we could announce also that we were the only Kubernetes data management solution that was ransomware proof, with the help of the compatibility with all the API of the S3 object locking and versioning. We have a nice video about that in our YouTube channel if you want to take a look at it, with one of our engineers playing both the hacker and the customer restoring its data. But yeah, absolutely a huge point right now. You know that there is not one day without hearing ransomware attack, security breach issue, ransom, and things like that. So there is definitely here a huge point that we are some huge issue that we are solving with our integration. And because you need to know and you need to be aware that it is not because you are running containers that they are secure by default. Do not forget that they do all share the same operating system that you choose, and that if this base is not secure enough, then they will all share these security vulnerabilities. And so after that, Peter, I think it's your time to step up the stage again and do the wrap up of this webinar.
Yes, perfect. Let's see. Let's quickly switch, and there we go.
Yeah. Perfect, we can see your screen.
Yes, okay, great. I also saw a question about Tanzu support that should be supported, right?
Yes, so we have, there are two different versions of Tanzu, which is making it a little bit complex. So we have Tanzu, what we are calling TKGS and TKGM. So one is being completely deployed as a traditional Kubernetes cluster. So you just deploy Tanzu on your different VM and everything is working like that. The other one is being completely and automatically deployed through the Tanzu and the vSphere part, the vSphere layer. This one is giving us a little bit, is providing a little bit more complexity because it is basically proxying all the storage instruction, which is giving us, which basically we are losing the storage transaction in that case. So we are not compatible right now with it. Well, not natively compatible because we can still protect the application with our sidecar injection, but we are working on being compatible fully with this proxying version early next year.
Okay, good to know. Perfect. So Katia already mentioned it. Yeah. So later there will be also a more tighter integration between the Veeam solution and the Kasten K10 platform, right? So basically, it means that you will be able to use Veeam backup repository as a target, right? We saw that we could use S3, for example, right? Public cloud, NFS. So there will be an option to also specify a Veeam repository. This is in particular interesting if you are already using Veeam, let's say, on premises to protect your VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix cluster physical machines, right? And you just want all of that backup data to be in the same location on the same repository, right? So this will allow that. And then further on, you can move this data to object storage to a secondary repository, right? So also a great way to test Kasten K10 is a hands-on lab. Yeah, so there is a QR code on the screen. Feel free to scan it. Otherwise, just use your favorite search engine and go for Kasten hands-on lab. So then we spin up an entire environment where you can have a look and feel of the application and see what it is that you can do there. So this is great to getting to know the interface and its capabilities. Yeah. On the other hand, there is also, let's say, a free edition, right? So there is a starter edition, there is an enterprise edition which has a trial, and the starter edition is actually provided at no charge. Yeah, so it has the same functionality, but it's limited in scale and support because you can have only 10 nodes in this setup. So that's another way of, if you've done the hands-on lab and you want to know more about it, you want to keep testing, keep playing with it, well, very easily deploy it into your infrastructure or in public cloud. Yeah, as Katia showed, you can very easily spin it up on AWS or Azure or Google, yeah, and then go and play there. And when you are done with it, you can just, let's say, delete everything, and but at least you can play for as long as you want and test your use case. Yeah. If you want to know more about Kubernetes backup, definitely check out the Kasten.io website /resources. You find a lot of white papers there, a lot of useful information. Again, if you are sitting with some customer use case, or just for your own data center, you're thinking, okay, how should I tackle this? How should I deploy it? I have 10,000 questions. Do not be afraid. Involve Kasten, right? Or you can also get in contact with your Veeam representatives, and then we will bring you in contact with people like Gatien, right, who can explain you everything from A to Z and back, and you will get all the information, all the details, etc. Right? So with this, I would like to thank everybody and to wrap up the webinar. I see that we have some questions here, and I think that Gatien is answering most of them, or
yes,
has already answered most of them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think I did most of those one. The Tanzu one you asked about it. There is a last one in the dashboard. I saw 0 byte by snapshot and 1 gig by object storage. I see snapshot used as the backup. So yes, so in the demo, what you saw inside at this point was on the AWS cluster. So on the AWS cluster, I was using the native GP2 function, the GP2 storage class, which is basically allowing us to create native EBS snapshot and use then those EBS snapshots to clone them, create a proper backup point that we can then export to the S3. So in that case, there is no data consumed from a logical point of view in Kasten. It's only an EBS snapshot, a native EBS snapshot. And then we do export the content of the data with a Kasten native format into the object storage. So this is why it's not consuming storage from a Kasten perspective locally and only into the target object storage. I hope that my explanation was clear. If I was using a CSI, the GP2 CSI storage class, for example, I would have had 1 gig locally and 1 gig in the object storage also. Support of Tanzu, it was on your local Kasten environment. Absolutely, it was on my one in my local, the other one in EKS. In AWS, I saw storage. Yes, absolutely. That was it. Absolutely. On my local one, I still have I have 9 gig of snapshot, and then pushing into the object storage 1.3 megabyte. And why? It's because I did some changes into the storage location, removed the S3 that I had previously, and created a new one this morning. So no export has been done except some metadata. I'm sorry, it was a little bit misleading for you guys. And Vadim, yes, with pleasure. We hope that this webinar was great for you, that you learned new things about Kasten and how Kasten by Veeam can help you to protect your Kubernetes environment. And thank you, Peter, for this presentation, those additional slides, and also for organizing this regular webinar with your VCSP customer and partner.
Yep, great. Well, we had a lot of questions, so that's always good, right, to see that we have an attentive and sharp audience pointing out all the different things. So perfect, then we can wrap it up. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is recorded. The slides and the recording will appear on the website actually where you registered, or you will receive an email in a couple of days with all of the information. All right, thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.